Were you told you were shy? Do you identify as shy? Do you hate that word now? Do you just wish you could get over it and get on with your life? Welcome to Shining Beyond Shy, empowering you to create a greater life than you ever thought was possible. With your Shining Beyond Shy host, Fiona Cutts. Hi, everybody. I'm Fiona Cutts, your host for Shining Beyond Shy, and I'm really happy this week that I have Tyler Foley with me. So Tyler, you describe yourself as a widely entertaining storyteller and author. And from what I understand, it wasn't always like that for you. You were shy, and this is a podcast about shyness. So would you like to tell us a little bit about your story?
Well, yeah. And I think most children, I think first starting growing up, I've always had a showman in me. I've always been a bit of a performer. I've always liked doing it, but I remember, and to this day, I'll be really honest. I, as a published author and actor and performer, have this outward appearance of being an extrovert. And the reality is I'm actually an introvert. I'm uncomfortable around crowds. I'm uncomfortable around people. I don't really know what to say a lot of the times. And even though I like the spotlight, one of the things that I like about having the spotlight on me is that you're kind of in your own little world. And it's a weird expression of the ultimate form of isolation, because you're in control. I know what's going on here, and if everybody else is there and I'm here, then I'm okay. It's when I have to mix and mingle that I get really quiet and really shy. And I think back to even dinner parties that my family would have, like Christmas and Easter, or just general social gatherings. And if I couldn't be the center of attention, but somebody would try to talk to me, or something that was outside of something that I was in control of. Hey, Tyler, what are you doing? I would be like, and I'd shy away. I wanted to hide behind a parent or find a place of comfort.
Mm.
And that's where, as weird and as counterintuitive as it seems, being on stage has been one of the greatest blessings for me, because I've been able to come out of my shell and find who I am, and really learn how to cope and not be so socially awkward, by finding a way of making everything a performance as opposed to just while I'm on stage.
Interesting. And so it's funny, whenever I interview people, I'm like, I could ask this, I could ask this, I could ask this. So I have to choose what I'm going to ask you. So is that still the case for you with social interactions? Do you still find you're a bit, or has that changed, would you say?
I've adapted. I haven't changed, but I've adapted. I've learned coping mechanisms. Like I said, one of them is making everything a bit of a performance if I have to. So, my wife laughs about it, because there's Tyler, who you and I are, you're right, me. In my everyday life, I'm in my house, you and I are chatting, I'm me. It's who my wife knows, Tyler. But then there's Sean Tyler Foley, which is my stage name, my professional name. And Sean Tyler is a bigger, more exaggerated version of me. And my wife can tell the difference, because apparently my voice changes. And I know what she means. I don't hear it myself, but I know what she means, because, if I'm in a social situation, I'm a little bit more friendly than what I would naturally comfortably be. Right. I'm a little bit more like this. Hi. Yes, absolutely. How are you? Tell me more. What are you? How are you? What do you do? Tell me. Fascinating. And I will lead conversations with questions so that I don't have to answer a lot about myself.
Right.
And But I do have, like, I'm a public figure now. So, I do a lot of meet and greets. I do a lot of book signings. I do my own workshops and presentations. And part of the expectation is that you're making yourself available to the attendees. And so I have had to learn to be more comfortable in social interactions than what I would normally be, because if I had it my way, I would tuck into the green room, I would put on some headphones, I'd listen to some music, I'd read a book, and I would recharge on my own. And that's really what I want to do. And I don't like small talk. I want to have meaningful conversations, not conversations for the point of talking.
Actually, that was kind of going to be my next question, is that because with a lot of people that I work with, I find that they tend, and I'm going to say I was like this as well, we tend to beat ourselves up because we're not very good at having these types of conversations. And then what I suddenly realized is, oh, it doesn't really interest me. It's like, I have an example from a Facebook chat today with somebody who sent me a friend request, and I was like, yeah, I'm happy to be friends with you, virtual friends. And then he asked me something about the work I do, access consciousness, and he's like, oh, do you think that I can learn it where I live in Bombay? And I was like, yeah, sure you can. And then he was like, so tell me about you, tell me about your family. And I was like, oh, I'm really happy. It's not even as though this was going to get me work because it was in Bombay. It's like, I'm really happy to talk about access consciousness and recommend somebody who I might or might not know in Bombay. But as soon as he started asking about me, I was like, oh, and it's like, okay, that's not wrongness. But also, I think all of my life, a lot of the conversations that people would have in the pub, I just wouldn't be interested in. And I remember as a girl sort of wanting to be in the in crowd and then suddenly being invited out to something in the in crowd and being really bored. And yeah, you're laughing. It's like,
It's true. Well, and for me, I grew up in theater. I've been on stage since I was 6 years old. And one of the wonderful things about most people in the creative arts is that they have a different viewpoint. A lot of them have very interesting things to say. And so and even growing up in my family, like my mom is brilliant. My aunts and uncles are all very, very smart, very articulate, very learned, very intelligent. And debate was a common thing around my dinner table, and having deep conversations, and no topic was ever taboo. And we could explore, like I've the first wedding that I think I ever attended was a gay wedding, and being able to, have a conversation about, well, who's the mummy and who's the daddy? Well, they won't have a mummy and daddy. They're daddy and daddy. Well, how does that work? And well, it's different people are love, and families come in all different shapes and sizes. And like conversations. And then to be even to the other side where, I grew up in a very rural community, very conservative community. So although we're having those conversations, I'm having other conversations with other family members who are like, no, it's sin and you shouldn't do it. And this is why. And the Bible says this. And I can go, oh, but where does the Bible say that? And, like I've always had the very interesting conversations. And so the mundane ones don't interest me. And I think that one of the ways that I've adapted is I just don't tolerate the mundane. That I will lead a conversation. And if somebody is telling me something that is uninteresting, no, tell me really, like, what was that like for you? How did you feel through that situation? And if they want to know about me, I want to know, what part of that do you want to know? What is the relevance? What are you hoping to learn so that I can better guide that conversation? Like, I want to go, if you want to go deep with me, I'll go deep. I want to have that conversation, but I want to do it. And that's the other thing. I want to do it one-on-one. If you and I are talking, I want to converse with you. I want to share an experience with you. And so that the conversation that we're having tunes out the rest of the crowd, and then I can really focus on you and me.
Okay, I love this. And I just want to draw it a bit out for the audience, the shy audience, because I know that this is something that I can really relate to and something that I really judged myself for. And I think there are people out there who are probably judging themselves for this. So it's just really worth thinking about that. Oh, if you're the sort of person who, when you have conversations, you actually want them to be meaningful, you actually want to find out something real about the other person, that's not a wrongness. But if you look at the world now and how superficial most of what is going on is, just know that you're likely to be different from a lot of other people. And I think for me and for a lot of the people who are likely to be listening to this, we are different. It's like the superficial world that's going on at the moment. Often it doesn't interest us. It doesn't make sense to us. And it tends to be that without more information, and I love the way that you just talked about it, we go into judgment of ourselves, think that we're wrong for not being like other people. No, we're not wrong. And I think for a while I thought I was better because I was like this. And it's like, no, we're not better. It's just that we're different, and acknowledging that will really help us.
And there's a power that comes from self-awareness. And there's also an incredible freedom that comes from boundaries. That seems counterintuitive, where you're like, well, no, but boundaries confine. Well, all boundaries do is delineate rules. Right? For me, the walls in my house are there not to keep you out, but to tell you where the door is. You know, this is how I want to interact. This is where I would like you to enter my house. I don't have you come in my bedroom window. I have you come in the front door to the living room, because that's where I want to converse with you. And I think when you have the awareness of who you are, and you combine that with strong boundaries that you can communicate without, you know, I live in Canada. I live on the longest undefended border in the world. There's a very clear delineated boundary on the northern border of the United States. But I can walk across that at any time. There's rules for me to enter into the United States. That is a boundary. If I follow the rules, there is no problem. There's nothing preventing me from getting there. I just have to know what the rules of engagement are and follow them. If I look at the southern border of my southerly neighbor, there's a wall. That wall is there to keep you out. I think people need to understand the difference between when they're putting up a wall and when they're putting up a boundary. A boundary can be crossed. There's just rules for going over it. A wall is there specifically to keep people out, and you don't want to interact with them. And I think people confuse the two. For me, I have boundaries. It's not that I don't want to interact with you. It's just that if I'm going to interact with you, I want that interaction to be meaningful. I don't have time for shallowness. I'm a busy person. And so if I'm going to invest time is my most valuable asset. I need a return on my investment. So if I'm going to invest time in you, it needs to be worth my time, and it needs to be worth your time. We need to come out of that interaction better than when we entered it. And so I don't want to know what you had for breakfast. I don't care. But if it was informed because you were using the vegan choice because you used to live on a farm and saw animals being slaughtered, and you recognize that life was precious, and so therefore you don't eat ham and eggs, that to me is interesting. And now I want to explore that. I want to know why that was a choice. But the fact that you had a fruit bowl for breakfast, I don't care.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So what advice would you give to shy people if they find themselves in this situation, which I used to be an accountant in the corporate world, a shy accountant in the corporate world, who kind of kept things together, except when it came to having to give presentations. And I mean, for a long time, I was quite successful at avoiding giving presentations. And then there came a job where basically every few months I had to give these quite high profile presentations. And I used to literally worry about them for 2 months beforehand, feel like I messed them up, and then beat myself up afterwards. So do you have any tips for anybody who finds themselves in that situation?
Yeah. So the first one is again, that shyness and stage fright are two interrelated but totally different things. Stage fright is a real thing, often complicated by our being uncomfortable with having attention drawn to ourselves, particularly if we're shy. So the first of all, the best way to get over that is immersion therapy. Right? Like, the more you can seek out some of these opportunities, one of the things that I talk about in a lot of my training is confidence through competence. And competence actually has a legal definition, at least where I am. And legally, competence is defined as adequately qualified, suitably trained, with sufficient experience to perform the task with minimal or no supervision. So when it comes to giving a presentation, if somebody has asked you, in your case, a job where in a corporate accounting world, you're required to give a presentation and you're having to do for a year because they're quarterly, you are qualified to do that just on the basis of your knowledge, because somebody has asked you to do it. Now we have to look at those other two components. So adequately qualified, but are you suitably trained, and do you have sufficient experience to perform the task with minimal or no supervision, which basically means, can you do it and feel comfortable doing it? Well, the only way to get that sufficient experience is to do it over and over and over and over again, and recognize the fact that you're not going to feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You're not, because in order to get that comfort, it's like the first time you drove a car, right? Most people can get into a vehicle right now and drive and not even think about it. It's automatic. But I guarantee you, the first time you got behind the wheel, your heart was racing. You didn't know what you were doing. You're nervous. Do I merge into the traffic? How do I do it? Is this a standard? How do I clutch? I just stalled out. I don't know what I'm doing. And you want to give up. But you didn't give up. You did it again, and then it got a little bit better. And then you did it again and got a little bit better. And now you don't even think about it. You just hop in the car and, off you go to the grocer and you pick up your milk, and then you come home, and it's almost an extension of yourself. But it's recognizing that in order to get comfortable, you have to get uncomfortable. And so if you're going to have to do it. And then the other thing is how do you prep now? Most people prep trying to memorize their presentation, and it doesn't serve you, because what happens the second that you get in there, you get flustered, you forget the word, which then creates more flustered, which makes you feel that you're not doing a good job. You feel that you're being judged. And now all of a sudden you don't want to do it anymore because you're not getting over that discomfort. Really, what you need to do is embrace the fact that you are the expert. And the audience is on your side, right? Even if we're being told that we have to go to that meeting, right? So you have to give a quarterly presentation on what was going on in the firm. Your boss has said you have to do it, and then your boss has turned around and said, and you people have to come and listen to what Fiona has to say. So those people are now required to be there. Those people, at worst case scenario, are passively indifferent to your message, right? They don't care. There's other people who are there who are like, I do care. But the worst case scenario is that they just don't care about the message because they would rather be somewhere else. But if they actually wanted to be somewhere else, they would find an excuse, because we've all gotten sick or had a meeting that we couldn't move around, or there's a client that we had to meet and you just skipped the meeting. If you really didn't want to be there, you just wouldn't go, because we are self-serving. So if your audience is there, they're on your side. They want you to succeed. Nobody shows up to a presentation, whether it's in a boardroom or in a conference center or in a theater, or even going and watching something on the telly or in a movie house. Nobody shows up and goes, man, I hope this sucks. I hope I get nothing out of it, and I hope this person bombs. We don't, as an audience, sit in our seat thinking that about the presenter. But as a presenter, what are we always thinking? Oh, I'm awful at this. I don't want to do this. I don't feel comfortable doing this. I don't even know the information. Why did they pick me? Why couldn't they have picked Ed down the hall? He knows this stuff so much better than me. So why didn't they pick him? Why do they always pick on me? Like, you know what I mean? Like, none of that actually exists in our audience mind. It's all in our mind. So knowing that your audience is on your side and you wouldn't have been asked to do it if you weren't the authority to do it. So maybe somebody knows more than you about it, but there's a lot of people who know less than you about it. You were picked because you knew what this particular audience needed to hear. So stop comparing yourself to other people. The audience is on your side. You were the expert, or they would have picked somebody else. Now you need to prep properly. Stop memorizing the script. And the worst part is, and I am married to one of the most gifted and talented project managers on the planet. She works for one of the largest commercial builders globally in one of their special projects divisions, and she's one of their senior project managers in it. My wife is brilliant. She has to give these presentations. She is married to a professional speaker coach. The number of times I catch her memorizing word for word what she's going to say drives me insane. Because I tell her every time, I'm like, babe, stop it. She's like, yeah, but I don't feel comfortable with the material. So I'm going to feel better if I memorize it. I'm going to feel better if I memorize it. And I'm like, all right, tell me how that works out. Every time she comes back, she's like, oh, that meeting went awful. I got flustered. I didn't know what I was going to say. And I couldn't do the thing. And I'm like, and what are the ones that go well for you? She's like, it's great when I can just, speak off of the top of my head and when I can just talk about a project because I know the project. I'm like, okay, so quit memorizing your script. Start learning your material. And learning your material means that you can say it and speak about it in 20 different ways without using the same word. That's when you know that you have mastered your material. If you know you have 3 months to prep for this, learn something new about it every day so that if somebody comes to you and just asks a question, you can answer the question. And then, again, how do we as shy people or introverts like to interact? We like answering other people's questions. So let your audience inform your presentation. Don't go in with the plan up here. Your job is to give people information and take them from point A to point B. But let them inform you of how you're going to travel. I think of it like if I want to come visit you in the UK, right? I'm in Canada, you're in the UK. I have a lot of options. I could drive to Newfoundland, get on a ferry, and get over. I can hop on a plane and fly direct. Maybe I have to connect through Toronto or New York, or I could take a direct flight. But if I lock myself into, if I'm going to get from Calgary to London on flight 018, departing from Calgary to Heathrow at 8:15 a.m., then that's the only way that I can get to you. And that's what memorizing a script is. So what happens if the plane goes mechanical or the crew have to reschedule? If I'm locked to a script, I have to wait for that plane to take off. And if it never takes off, we don't go anywhere. But if I know what the end destination is and I allow my audience to inform me and I say, hey, Fiona, I want to come visit you. How should I get to you? And you're like, oh, the train would be wonderful. Okay, well, let's get a ticket. Are we stopping anywhere? Yeah, I've never been to Toronto myself, so I'll fly to Calgary. Let's hop on the train. Let's go to Toronto. Then let's get into Halifax. I would love to see Nova Scotia because it's New Scotland and I like Scotland here, so I want to see New Scotland. And then we can hop on a boat. We'll charter a ferry. We'll go across, and because I want to do the Atlantic crossing the same way that the Titanic did. And then when we get into Belfast, right? Like there's all these different things. And you as the audience are telling me, and I'm like, okay, well, I was just going to fly, right? But you want to see more of it. And then maybe a couple of days later, I'm presenting again. I'm like, okay, Fiona, I got to get you to London. And you're like, yeah, that detour just was exhausting. So let's fly into Toronto and then we'll fly over to Heathrow directly. You tell me. And that's the difference between knowing the destination and exploring how to get there and being able to go off on waypoints versus locking yourself into a script, which means you've bought a ticket for a one-way form of transportation. And if anything screws up, you can't get to the end destination. So where the majority of your preparation needs to be is not memorizing words, but learning and truly ingesting knowledge so that when somebody asks a question, you can competently and therefore confidently answer that question and give the information that is needed to from your heart and not your head. And when you can do that, then it doesn't matter if you're shy because you stop caring, because at that point, you're not worried about judgment. You're not worried about what other people think of you. You're more concerned about making sure that they are served. And that's really the key, is keeping them in mind as opposed to you. Because what happens is when we're shy, we're getting locked into our own internal thoughts, and it becomes a self-centered thing. I feel uncomfortable. I don't like the situation. I don't think I know what it's doing. Someone else knows it better. Where if you can focus on the person and be like, is Fiona getting this? Am I coming across properly to her? Is there anything else that I can do to make this more clear for her? And I'm more concerned about you than I am about me. Then it doesn't matter if I'm shy because I forget that I'm shy.
I love that. That just that awareness that as shy people, it's such a inward looking thing. And it's like I think at first when I started working with shy people, I kind of hesitated to talk about it, because for a lot of people, it's like, it seems that shyness is some affliction that they're just born with, and it's such a problem. And then I'm going to tell them that they're self-obsessed. Although in some ways it's easier because I can say, well, I'm self-obsessed. And it's like just that change in focus. Oh, this isn't about me. Actually, this is about the audience. And in those days when I was working in the Red Cross in South Asia, and we used to go to different countries. And so I'd be in, say, Sri Lanka, telling them about their budget and all the rest of it. And it's like, it's actually true. I hadn't even seen it in quite the way that you spoke about it, that I was an expert. If somebody asked me about, hey, what's this number here on page 33? I was actually an expert, but I did absolutely try to direct it, because I thought that was my only hope of getting through it, to be honest. So it's really, yeah,
and
really
that's a common mistake that people think, well, I've been told to tell this stuff, so I'm going to tell this stuff. And you're like, no. You were asked to inform us and educate us on the meaning behind this stuff, and how other people are going to perceive that information is really more important than the information itself. So that's why I love, even in my own presentations, right? Like I do a 2.5-day seminar and a 5-day workshop on public speaking. I know the end destination is I need to get you feeling more comfortable standing on stage and having people stare at you. That's the end destination. I need you to be up on stage and be like, I feel good up here, or at least I don't feel as awkward as I did on Monday up here, right? That, as long as I've had some form of forward momentum in that, that's great. How I get there is entirely informed by my audience, and the techniques that I use and the training that I use is similar, but maybe I have an advanced audience. Maybe I have a whole bunch of people who have been speaking for a long time and they're just trying to get clearer with their message. Well, I can jump a lot of the early pillars in the training because we've already got a really solid foundation. Some people are so terrified that they can't even use words to articulate that they're terrified, because when I ask them, well, how do you feel about public speaking? They stare at me blankly and go, well, in that case, I don't even have a foundation. Yeah. I have to clear the forest before we can build. Like I got to get barrels, get down to bedrock, And so I'm constantly being informed by my audience. And as somebody who, again, is an introvert and is shy, that's where what people need to understand is the person asking the questions is the person who has all the control. Right. So if I asked you the question, I have the control. So, and if I'm in using my questions to get a sense of where you're at and learn more about you so that I can be of service to you, if I keep you in the front of my mind, then I don't have to worry about it. So I'm able to, as a shy person, hold on to my control freak nature, my need for it. And I can say, well, what do you need to know right now? Where are you at? Tell me more about you. Tell me about an experience where you first felt this way. Tell me about an experience where you felt the opposite. That will inform me. And then I can say, okay, well, excellent. Well, with this is something that I have learned from my experience that has worked. This is what I have used. And this is the first time that I felt similar to that. And so we can now build a rapport by having a conversation based around the information that needs to be presented, but using it as a guideline, as a map on how to get to that destination, as opposed to being the destination itself.
Mm. I love the way you're talking about all of this. And you're making me laugh because you're coming out with things. It's like, because I've talked about this on other podcasts and in written work that I do about how as shy people we're controlling. And I sometimes kind of hesitated to say it. And as I said just now, it's like the fact that I can say, well, I am controlling, me, are you too? And you're coming out and just saying all these things, which is great.
Well, here's a little a super Mind Ninja Pro secret for you and your audience.
Yeah,
the thing you're afraid to say is probably what your audience needs to hear, because somewhere deep in our soul, we're going, oh, this is how I feel, but I shouldn't say it. And as soon as that one person is brave enough to say, I'm a bit of a control freak. I don't feel comfortable around people and I don't like small talk because I find it a waste of my time. Everybody who feels that way is going to be like, yes, that's exactly how I feel. Tell me more. And the people who are like, I don't get that, they're like, and then you can look at them and be like, well, obviously you're not shy, so you're not my target audience. So thank you and have a good day. And they will be like, okay, because they won't care. But the people who do care and they want to hear about it. And that's the other thing. It's amazing how when you are self-aware enough to the point where you can say the things that are maybe a little uncomfortable or maybe that you're afraid to say, how quickly you're going to find the audience who resonates with you, who you can have those meaningful conversations with, whether that's one-on-one or one-on-many. You're going to find the people and it's more comfortable. This is more comfortable for me because we're having a conversation that's real, where I don't have to pretend to be somebody. And that's really the key to overcoming your shyness, is stop trying to be the image that you think people want to see and just start being who you are.
Yeah, I love everything you're talking about. And I just want to draw out just that thing of the thing that we hesitate to say, that we think people may react to or whatever. Actually, as you say, it can be the thing that just sets those people who need to hear it, it sets them free. And yeah, I thank you for that.
It's one of the pillars. I have three main pillars in all of the things that I talk about. The thing you're afraid to say is the thing your audience likely needs to hear. Authenticity is synonymous with self-awareness, and you never tell a story without a point, and you never make a point without a story. And if you put those three things together, you're going to be one of the most powerful speakers in the world each and every time.
Well, I've really enjoyed the way that you talk with these, I don't know if it's quite some analogies or stories. I really like that. And I guess it's made me laugh. And you say that you're, widely entertaining. So yes, you are. So it's making me laugh and I enjoy that. But can you say more about what happens for the audience when you're telling these stories and these sort of analogies sometimes when you're talking?
Well, the reason you want to make a point using a story is for a multitude of reasons, but the primary ones are, if you're telling a story from your personal experience, nobody knows you better than you. You are an authority and an expert on you. So when you tell me how you experienced a thing, I can't refute that. That is how you experienced it. If you say, even if it's in a presentation, right? You're having to give a quarterly meeting at an accounting firm. If you're saying, these are what these statistics or these numbers mean to me, there is absolutely no way that I can be like, no, that's not what they mean. No, that is what they mean to me. You may interpret it differently. And that, again, opens up that dialogue and conversation. How do you interpret it? What does it mean to you? What do you see as a leading indicator or a lagging indicator out of what is being presented here? Like what are your thoughts on this? How does this impact you? And now all of a sudden you're having a dialogue with your audience, which is helpful when you're a shy person because, right, you don't want the spotlight on you. So if you're asking questions and then getting answers from other people, the spotlight's on them, which always makes us as shy people feel better. You're like, ha ha ha, attention on you, ha ha, right? And that allows you to still, it's amazing because people will remember that you gave the presentation, right? Because you were the one who was up there. But everybody's going to remember how it flowed based on the information that was shared. You don't have to be the one that is saying it. You just have to be the one guiding the journey. So when you tell a personal story, nobody can refute it. And you know all the details. So you can go as deep into the weeds or as shallow on the top surface of the water as you want to get. You can choose how deep you go into it because you know it, and you don't have to memorize anything. If I was to ask you about the first time you drove a car, I bet you could tell me. You would think back to it, maybe a little hazy, but you'd be able to give me details of it. We can, the first time you ever felt flutters of a crush, that you can think back to it. You can tell me right now and you can give the details. Those are things that you don't have to memorize, right? You just know it. You can recall it. You can tell me that story. So finding those stories that illustrate the point that you're trying to make is important because nobody knows that story better than you. And the other reason stories are so powerful is because they say never judge a person until you've walked a mile in their shoes. I can't physically come over and walk in your shoes. I'm a size 8 and I don't do well in stilettos, So I can't, and maybe you're a flats girl. Maybe I want stilettos. Do you know what I mean? Like I actually can walk in stilettos. That's a story for another time.
You can.
I can. I'm good. I can go up to 4 inches and be quite comfortable. But the fact of the matter is, you and I are probably different shoe sizes, and physically we're separated. So I can't physically walk a mile in your shoes. But if you tell me a story from your point of view, and I can see it then through your lens, you can take me on that journey. Now I understand why you think that way or feel that way. I don't have to agree with it, but I can understand it. Telling me your story gives me empathy for you, gives me sympathy for you, gives me an understanding into your thought process, allows me to see the world through your eyes. And again, nobody knows it better than you. So it's going to bring me on board to the way that you're thinking and your thought process. And you know the details better than anybody else. So it's easier for you to tell me that story. And that's why using stories to illustrate points is so effective. And why when we use it as a storytelling medium, why we have that rapport, because you can understand me better and I can understand you better. And that's when you have that really powerful communication.
I love it. Thank you. And just one more thing I'd love to ask you. So yeah, you talk about humor and you are funny. Do you think that, is that something that you think everybody can be or do in their talks? Or do you think it's something that, you happen to be great at?
I've learned to find humor as a self-defense mechanism to make social interactions more pleasurable for everybody involved. Because otherwise I'm dying inside. And if I'm dying inside, I'm uncomfortable. And if I'm uncomfortable, you're probably uncomfortable, which makes everybody uncomfortable. So I have found humor to be the most disarming and most easy way to do it. Is everybody naturally funny? No. Can you learn techniques? Yes. Are the things that are funny to you going to be funny to everybody? No. But are the things that are funny to you, will they resonate with the people who are close to you in a thought pattern? Yes. And again, so the funny is definitely subjective,
Yeah.
and acquired taste. And so I think everybody can be funny given the right circumstances. If you have the right audience and the right timing, anybody can be humorous, because we can find humor in anything, just the same way that we can find tragedy in anything. And it's just a matter of wanting to find it.
Yeah.
So for me, I always want to find the humor. I want to find the light side of it. I want to know, you know, if anything, find the counterpoint. Maybe don't even have to be funny, but oftentimes the humor comes in exploring the absurdity of the extreme. So if I, if somebody is very set in their way, I will, maybe it's not funny, but I'll be like, but what if over here? And
Mm.
sometimes you get a giggle just by being, by exploring absurd extremes.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so to short answer to your question, no, not everybody is funny. Yes, everybody can learn to find humor in something. And although their joke or jest may not land with everybody, the people who will resonate with it will find it funny.
Mm. Mm. I just want to pick up where you talked about lightness, and just thinking about, well, shy people listening, that one of the things that really changed for me in my journey with shyness was when I started to be able to be lighter around it. Because for a long time, it just felt like it was, you know how sometimes our problems can seem the worst ones in the world. And so some of the people I work with shyness, we're convinced that shyness is the worst affliction in the world. And of course, other people have their own journeys where they're convinced that their stuff is the worst. But for me, it really started to change where I was able to be, well, maybe being shy isn't the worst thing in the world, maybe, and even being able to laugh. I mean, since I've been presenting classes around speaking and outshining shy, I mean, I've had times where I've said really stupid things on, on live Zooms or on the stage. And I've been like, I have to laugh at this, otherwise it's just going to go down a really unhelpful route. And yeah. And being me, it's like sometimes sometimes a month later, and sometimes it can even be a day later. Now I'll actually talk about it. You'll see it up on Facebook. Oh, I thought I was over shyness. So you know what? I'm not. I kind of messed this up. Yeah. It's such a relief to not take myself so seriously, because I think that sort of shyness problem thing, it can seem such a serious, heavy, weighty thing.
And I think that's really the key, is not releasing the weight of the world from your shoulders because it wasn't ever there to begin with.
Yeah.
Like you're shy. Great. So is, 15-20% of the world. And you have stage fright. Guess what? 77% of the world will say that they have some form of anxiety over public speaking. So you're not unique. You're not alone. But like you said, there's other, go talk to somebody in Somalia right now and tell them that being shy is a problem. Right? Yeah. Like, devastating to me. But okay. But like you said, there's so many other people. And if you can just give yourself the freedom. And the other thing is too, my favorite form of humor is self-deprecating humor. I don't take myself seriously. I have for my entire life have very large ears. And for the first, couple dozen years of my life, being on stage meant that I would flush, which means my ears would glow red. And I remember people calling me Dumbo, and like, it was all kinds, just right, whatever. And I remember once being in a boardroom presentation, flushing, and somebody pointing out that I was flushing and was I hot? And I said, no. It's just I brought my own lighting package to the boardroom. And I don't even know why I said it. You know what I mean? But I just knew that my ears were glowing bright red, and all I could think of was Rudolph's nose leading Santa on his sleigh. And so a lighting package came into my head, and everybody laughed, and I laughed. And eventually, as I was going on, the flush grew away because I felt more comfortable and I got into my rhythm, and life was fine. You know? But that again, it goes back to that prep. Usually when I'm feeling anxious or nervous or shy or uncomfortable in a social scenario, it's because I don't feel comfortable in my own skin. And I usually don't feel comfortable in my own skin because I don't feel that I'm in control of the situation. I usually don't feel that I'm in control of the situation because I don't feel like I know what either the expectation is, or I don't know why I'm there, or I don't feel comfortable as a subject matter expert, right? I feel best when I know that I'm the expert. And if I don't feel like I'm the expert, then I just don't want to open up my mouth. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to come across stupid. And again, it's all that internal dialogue, self-reflection. People don't care. They don't, right? Like think of even the conversation what we were talking about. Like, I don't want to know about the mundane. So just, I don't care. I'm not going to ask. And so if I start, when I catch myself into those cycles, the preparation is usually, how do I feel more comfortable in my own skin? And so now I've learned that, yeah, if I'm feeling shy or if I'm feeling stage fright, really what I'm feeling is social pressure and judgment. And the best way to do that is to meditate and not take myself seriously and focus on other people instead of myself. And if I focus on other people, it's really hard to focus on me. It's really hard to get aggrandizing and into my own head and thinking I'm bigger than I am, or that it's more important than what it actually is. And now I can be concentrated on serving other people or just getting to know other people. Like I adopt the curiosity of a 6-year-old. One of the greatest lessons that I've gotten from my daughter is she's not shy. She's curious about the world. She will go up to anybody and say, "Do you want to be my friend?" And I actually used that as an experiment a couple of years ago, because I first saw her doing it when she was about 3 years old, going to like the play places. She would walk up to anybody. Can we be friends? Or do you want to be my friend? Can we play? And I thought, how fascinating, because like I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to walk up to a grown adult and say, "Will you be my friend?" And then a friend of mine wrote a book called 52 People, in which he approached complete strangers once a week for a year and asked them a series of questions. They were always the same questions, 5 questions, I believe. And he would approach them anywhere, in an airport, coffee shop, bookstore, park, wherever. He would just find a person and just ask them, "Hey, I'm doing this thing. Would you be willing to answer the questions?" And there was almost no one who said no to him. Almost everybody was fascinated by it and said yes. And I was inspired by that. So I've started doing that, because I'm shy. I'm socially awkward. I don't like interactions for no reason. So how's the best way to get over that? To do that very thing. So I'll be in a grocery store and I will just turn to a person, and I won't ask the way that Kenzie will you be my friend? But hey, while we're waiting here, do you mind having a conversation? And you'd be surprised the number of people who are like, okay. I mean, they're feeling awkward too, and you're awkward, and be like, why did you come to the grocery store today? What was on your grocery list? Did you get everything on your grocery list, or did you get more stuff or less stuff? Did you find everything? She's going to ask if you were able to find everything. So we might as well have this conversation now, so you know whether you're lying to her or not. I've had those conversations with people in grocery lines or wherever. And it's amazing how freeing it is. And then I'm controlling that situation. So even though I know I'm shy and inside I'm dying, it's exercising that muscle. And the more I exercise it, the easier and easier it gets.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't think it's ever made sense to me that the world is divided up into people which is like a tiny percentage, and people you don't know. I'm like, I'm actually talking, well, and often I do, which is funny, isn't it? Saying that I'm shy, and yet I kind of don't get it, that you're not supposed to talk to people that you don't know.
Yeah, we didn't flash stranger danger across the podcast at the beginning of this interview, Fiona. We forgot to do that. And now look at us. We're having a conversation and we're friends. How dare us, shy people get along like this.
This shouldn't happen. You're right.
It shouldn't happen.
Oh, thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed talking to you. So can you tell, we'll put it in the show notes, but can you tell us where people can find you if they'd like to find out more about you?
Absolutely. But before I do, because, and I got to tell you, I love Shining Beyond Shy.
Oh,
and I love what you're doing. I think this is important because shyness doesn't need to be crippling. And you and I both know that you can be a functioning shy person and still have a good time in society. And it's important that you are giving a platform for people to, first of all, know that they're not alone. Like, it's okay. And that's the other thing you're saying. It's okay. It's okay to be shy. It's okay to be shy. It's not an affliction. There's nothing wrong with you. And hey, guess what? There are other people like you out there. So I would love it as a personal favor to me, if your followers who are listening to this right now could just take a moment and whatever platform they're on, give it a 5-star review or give it a like or a thumbs up, share it with a friend, be super brave and actually comment in the comments about an episode that you liked or what you like about this show so that Fiona can have similar guests on so that you can learn more. Because if you're listening to this show, you're listening for a reason, you're getting some value out of it, and it is not easy. It is not easy to put on these shows and make them happen and get them out there and get them listened to and broadcast. So the only way that Fiona knows that she's doing good is if you let her know that she's doing good. And the best way to do that is to give it a thumbs up or a 5-star review and actually write what you're enjoying about the show. So if your audience is willing to do that, I want them to hit pause right now. Don't wait, don't delay, like do it right now. Hit pause, give the review, come back. And now that you're back, if you want to know more about me and what I'm doing and why Fiona felt it was important to have me on her show and why I got to be a guest on Shining Beyond Shy, then come over to SeanTylerFoley.com. And Sean is spelled the proper Irish way, SeanTylerFoley, SeanTylerFoley.com. And you can find out all the information about me. You can pick up a copy of The Power to Speak Naked. You can do whatever it is that you want to do and learn about me. You can do it at SeanTylerFoley.com. And if people really want to get brave, they can always join my free Facebook group, which is called Endless Stages. And I will really push your comfort zone if you're self-identified shy person. Come on in. There's some really fun challenges and a really supportive free community where you can learn all kinds of ways of overcoming shyness, overcoming stage fright, telling more compelling stories, how to figure out what your story is, even if you think that your life is boring. Like, your life is not boring. You actually have some really cool highlights if you think about it, and they can illustrate some really cool points if you're just willing to share them. So we explore all of that over in the free Facebook group. So SeanTylerFoley.com, or you can pop on over to Endless Stages, and I'd be happy to serve you there.
That's brilliant. I love that. Endless Stages. Almost as much. Well, tell us the title of your book again. It's a brilliant title.
The Power to Speak Naked. I
love it. Brilliant. Thank you so much. It's been a total pleasure meeting you and laughing with you.
The pleasure and joy is all on this side, Fiona. If there's ever anything that I can do to be of service to you or your audience, just reach out, and thank you for having me on.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bye, everybody. See you again next week.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I'm so grateful for you. It would be great if you could subscribe. Great if you could leave a review wherever you're listening. And if you'd like some quick, simple tips to overcome shyness wherever you are, please go to my website, FionaCuts.com, where you can download my free product, 5 Steps to Overcoming Shyness Wherever You Are. Thank you again, and see you next time.